Perfect. So, welcome to this video where in each episode a special guest will share with me their top 5 games of all time. My name is Arturo. You can find me on Twitter at Arturo Nereu. And in this edition of Top 5, we have another very special guest. She is a very passionate person and she's behind multiple community initiatives. I have the pleasure of working with her for, I would say, 4 years or so. So in this episode, we have Ashley Alicea. Hey, Ashley, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
It's good to
Um,
see you again, even though we probably just saw each other like a couple of hours, maybe yesterday, but
yeah,
always fun to hang out and talk about games and not work, which we don't do enough of, even though
right,
we work
right.
in the same company. But
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you very much for your time. I know
for
you're
having me.
busy, but yeah, thank you very much. The first thing that I would like to ask you is maybe to give an introduction to yourself. Like, what do you do? Where do you work at? Where are you from? And all these things.
Sure. What do I do? I am a games evangelist at Unity Technologies, just like you.
I
So
know.
the two of us kind of do a lot of the same thing, but really what my job entails is working on game demos that highlight the latest new Unity features. And then I used to go to different events and travel around the world and give these presentations to conferences, workshops, user groups. And now we're in the era of COVID-19. So we're giving a lot of these talks and demonstrations online. But that's still been a lot of fun and a great way to connect with our community. And something that you mentioned before, that, I do a lot of community work. And that's kind of the big reason why I'm here. I've been, a game developer for many years, and I kind of really learned and grew so much from developer communities and the way that they helped me become the developer that I am today. And so it's really a joy to kind of continue and support the developer community, kind of like in a way of giving back, right, through Unity. And so that's kind of in short what I do.
Awesome. Well, now, yeah, we do work together at Unity. I mentioned that 4 years, but it's been more than 4 years or less than 4 years.
It's like 4 years and 2 months. So you're actually like almost like perfect.
Okay. So yeah, we've been working together for that long because when you joined Unity, we were on the same team, and we're still on the same thing, right? Like different things have happened in between, but we have been working together throughout
Yeah,
these
I would
years.
say there's been a lot of changes on our team and in Unity in general. It's grown so much, but I think kind of like the one constant I've had is that you've always been on my team, and so I think we've over time grown to be friends and then like mortal enemies and yeah, so like it's all great.
Yeah, but at which point in our relationship are we now? Mortal enemies or friends again?
I mean, I think that when you reach the mortal enemies phase, that's like when you're like really good friends, right? Like I
Okay,
think
okay.
that's like that's the part, that's the good part. So
Yeah, nice, nice. And also I want to ask you, where do you live now? Because you mentioned Unity, but we are in so many places, and also, well, I'm not curious about it because I know the answer, but maybe you want to tell us where are you from
sure.
originally?
So I am originally from Puerto Rico, and I grew up there, went to school there, and I then went to New York for college. And I initially kind of like went out and was going to study zoology and research animals. And then when I moved to New York, I got to know the game developer scene, especially the indie game developer community in New York City. And so then I moved to New York City for a couple of years, really got into games there, moved back home to Puerto Rico for a couple of years after that, and then moved back to New York City. I just like both places. I like hopping around. But right when I moved back to New York City that final time, I was planning to stay there permanently, but then somebody called Carl called me, and Carl, for context, is our director of evangelism at Unity Technologies. He gave me a call and said, "Hey, come work for us at Unity in San Francisco." And I literally had just gotten to New York, and I was like, "Okay, it's Unity. It's Unity. Of course, I'm gonna go." So I moved to San Francisco, and I've been in San Francisco for around the past 4 years, and it's been interesting. I miss
Awesome.
New York, to be honest, but San Francisco's okay.
Okay. I like that description of San Francisco.
San
So,
Francisco, it's okay.
so yeah, it's great that you mentioned, well, that we are talking about Puerto Rico, because also, when was that? Like 2 or 3 years ago that we have an event there, or a couple of events there. It was super fun. I love the city. You took the time to walk me around the San Juan, and it
Someone,
was,
yeah.
yeah. We had the
So for anybody who was watching, you might want context for why Arturo and I are mortal enemies. So he went to Puerto Rico with me. I toured him around. I took him to the best food places, but his takeaway and favorite food from that entire trip was a sandwich from Church's Chicken. And he
yeah.
still talks about it to this day. And this is the main reason why we are mortal enemies, because he went to my country and left loving the fast food. But, whatever.
Yeah, but that's true. I still, when I meet Puerto Rico, I just order some church's chicken food, just to remember those days. Yeah.
My heart is breathing terribly.
Yeah, I know. No, but it was beautiful. I remember the tour. I remember this like plaza where there were some like birds
Yes. You were very
stepping on
afraid.
people. Yeah,
Yes, you were terrified. It was fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But it was so much fun. Thanks for the tour. Now I want to also ask you about your story with video games.
Mhm.
Usually, people love video games because when they were young, they will have this console or something like that. I'm curious about, and I really don't know the answer for this one. So, what's your story? What made you love video games in the first place?
Oof. That's a whole story. It's interesting because I think that I didn't have the same or similar start with video games that I think a couple of other, like many developers I speak to know. Like a lot of the developers that I've worked with and spoken with had like all the consoles and such, and I didn't have that. Like when I was younger growing up, I remember my first kind of interaction with video games was I went to like a family friend's house, I guess, and they had a daughter that was a little bit older than me at the time, and I must have been like 5 years old. Um, and I don't know, but it had just come out, a Nintendo 64. So I think I remember. Point is, she had Nintendo 64 and Super Mario 64,
Yeah.
and she was playing it, and I remember I'm like, wow, what is that? I don't know what that is. Like, what are you playing? And she's like, it's Super Mario. And I'm like, okay. And you can't play. You have to be big to play it. And so I would just sit and just watch her play. And I was just like, that looks cool, and but I didn't have a console of my own. I went back home and I'm like, Mom, I want a video game. And she's like, no, don't do that. Like, go read a book. And so, and then in elementary school, I remember I have this is one of my most vivid memories of video games, where I saw a bunch of my friends sitting all together, really tightly packed at the cafeteria table. So I'm like, oh, something is happening. So I go over, and one of my friends at the time had a very small Game Boy Pocket, and I believe that had just kind of come out around that time as well. So he had a Game Boy Pocket, and he was playing one of the Legend of Zelda games, and he had just walked to a fairy fountain as I was looking over his shoulder, and he spoke to the fairy, and like a little circle of hearts came around the screen and everything, and to me that was like literal magic in my eyes. And I was like, what is, I want it. So I went home, I'm like, Mommy, I want a Game Boy. I want a Game Boy. I really want a Game Boy. Please. I begged for like a year, 2 years. And then after that, the Game Boy Color came out, and the Pokemon series was huge in the US at the time. The toys were everywhere. Everything was like a really big deal. I was super obsessed with the anime, and I would watch it every day before school. I
Before
remember
school, did you go at like in the late shift, or did you watch Pokemon super early in the morning?
in our country, it was very early in the morning when they played it. They played it like at like 6 a.m. around that time
Oh,
before school
okay. Yeah.
started. And so I would eat breakfast. I would eat like pancakes and watch Pokemon. And then I would put on my backpack and leave for school. And I remember, I don't remember what season it was, but the Pokemon the first movie came out. My dad took me like with a bunch of my friends, and then after that we were going to go on this big trip to Florida to go to Disney World. And so it was going to be like a big carpool with like one of my friends and like some of the other family members. And we saw Pokemon the first movie, and then we went home, and then we're getting ready to go to the road trip. And my mom came over to me and she's like, it's gonna take 3 days to drive to Florida. You're gonna get really bored, and your friends are probably gonna be really annoying. So I got you this. And she handed me a box, and I opened the box, and inside was a purple translucent Game Boy Color, and on the left side was Pokemon Red, and the right side was Pokemon Blue. And she gave me the box. And I opened the box. I started sobbing, like I was just crying, crying, crying. I had begged for years for a Game Boy, and I finally got one. And my mom was like, "Just this one." And I know it's because you like the movie and the show, and I guess it's you could watch it on the Game Boy or something. And I'm like, "No, but that doesn't matter. Thank you." so so that entire road trip, which was supposed to be, I think, like a huge fun trip where I learned and got to see different things in different states, I was just like, no, Game Boy. Um, and that changed my life. And that, like, to me, kicked off that's like my very long story of saying kind of just how I became absolutely addicted into video games and just needed them all.
And that
Gotta
also
catch them all. Yeah.
catch up more.
Yeah.
Also, that also speaks about your age, because like my story goes way back. Like I'm definitely older than you, and most of the people who I've talked to, they are older. But yeah, that's a nice story. Yeah. So you got red and blue.
Yes.
I'm gonna say that you played blue first.
Knowing me well and knowing my obsession with blue, that is a
Yeah.
very good assumption. I actually played red first because I like Charizard. So I really like Charizard. So I was like, I want to play red, but blue was my favorite. Oh, they were kind of the same. Anyway, we're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
talk about what my favorite Pokemon game is later. But
Yeah, that's actually a good segue to start talking about what we are supposed to talk today, which are your top 5 games of all time. So let's start with the first one, which I have to say I haven't played it, but I have seen it, or I've seen gameplay of the game. I've seen yeah, other people playing it. I love the music. I love the colors. But tell us about this first game, which is Locoro.
it's a mistake that you're starting with this one because I will spend the entire rest of this stream talking about it. That's okay. And like you mentioned, you haven't played it. So many people I know haven't played it, which is why I want to talk about it forever. Because if there's one game I could recommend for anybody to play, if you haven't played it, it's this one. Loroco is a game that originally came out for the PlayStation Portable, and it is I want to say it's kind of like a platformer. It's hard to say. It's like a physics-based rotational platformer. So at the time, you had your PSP, you would hold in your hands, and then you would use the bumper buttons on it to like tilt the world that like you were in, so that instead of moving the character, you're actually moving the planet that the character is in, and the character is a round, rolly, squishy thing that I
Yes.
guess you'll see in the visual, but basically you have these little balls of jelly that exist in this planet, and you have to save them. There's an alien species that invaded the planet, and it wants to eat all of these little jelly creatures, and you have to kind of roll them away to freedom. In the process of rolling them away, you have to eat these little berries that make the jelly creatures grow larger. Now, the game developer and me, what I loved about that is that I think it brought a really interesting mechanic. So I'm rolling these little jelly balls around the scene. You have like one big jelly ball. As you eat different berries, you get bigger and bigger. Now, when you press one of the buttons in the PSP, you kind of like explode and divide out into the number of fruits that you ate. So if you ate 6 fruits, you would turn into 6 mini jelly pieces. Now, this was a huge way to figure out and solve puzzles in the game. Like you might have to be like in a tunnel with different holes in the walls that you had to fill each like with a jelly in each one. So you have to divide them and like figure out where to put them. Or maybe you needed like a certain number of jellies to be heavy enough to like break open a doorway. It made it more than a traditional platformer where you're just moving around and avoiding things, and really made you think about your character's form and, I guess, like movement through the space as part of the puzzle solving, which I thought was really, really fascinating. And especially at the time when that game came out, and especially compared to many of the PSP games that were out at that time, a lot of the games, as much as I love them, were very kind of like either violent games or, very like, like fighting games, or
Mhm.
maybe it was like some kind of like, traditional puzzle game, but it's like, very, very traditional types of video games. And for me at the time when I was playing that, the box caught my eye just because it looked so different than anything else available on the shelf at that time. And I think that game is one of several that really helped introduce people to the kind of like current generation of games that we see today, where we have a lot of different like beautiful, colorful, alternative, non-violent indie games and even AAA games, whether that's Journey, whether that's Unravel, whether, it's, I feel like the first taste I got of those kinds of like unique creative experiences
Mhm.
was through Loroco, and that's why it was a really big deal for me.
And now that you mentioned this, and I've been thinking, it this game feels, or at least looks like a modern indie game, right? Like something that
Yep.
you could be playing today. It reminds me of things like Ooblets, and
Yep.
the game that Jeb was working on. What was the
What
name?
time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It feels like one of those type of games, and that's actually another point that I want to talk about, is the fact that this game, even when it was released in 2006, which is 14 years ago, which is so many years ago, it doesn't feel old, right? It feels like
So
modern.
I got they made a remastered version for PS4 recently, I think last year or something, and we got it and I played it and I'm like, this game aged so well. It's
Yeah.
so good. And I think what I love about it is that I still get the same level of joy from it playing it today that I did back then. And I think that, especially given the types of games that we have today, like Watam and others, like all these happy, joyful indie games, really at the time when the game came out, that was a breath of fresh air. That was incredible to me. And for me, that was one of the first kind of clicks in my brain that made me think about what games could be.
Hmm.
And like, because kind of my traditional perspective, especially when I was younger, was like, yeah, fighting video games. I play like Pokemon, which is like a role playing, RPG fighting video game. And then I will play action games like Dynasty Warriors, which was, like fighting whatever style game. And like,
Yeah.
like a lot of the games that I played growing up were just fighting. Even something like Super Mario was like, jumping on something's head and, killing the enemies and then getting to the finish line. And that one, at least for me, Loroco made a huge impact for me just because of how brilliant and vibrant and wonderful it was. And it made me feel that like the types of things that I love bright, brilliant, wonderful things.
Yeah.
And I love cartoons and I love animation, and it just like it's everything I loved in a video game. And it was the first time that I felt like my interests could be in a video game. So
And
yeah.
this feels like, I mean, I've seen like some projects or prototypes that you've worked on, and it feels like even the colors feels like you have some sort of yeah, you can tell that you've played this game because of the
Yeah.
colors that you use, because of the shapes, because of the, I will say, even like the ideas that you have are very aligned with Loco Roco. I want to ask you, when you, well, you said you played this on PSP. Did you have the PSP?
I did. Yes, I still do. I have it somewhere. Yeah.
What other games did you play on PSP?
I had all of maybe 3 games. No, so I remember Ape Escape, which I also loved. It was so good. I had Ape Escape on the PSP. I had Dynasty Warriors, which was like my super long-term obsession. I know a lot of people will watch this and go, "Oh my God, she likes Dynasty Warriors." I don't care. I'm gonna ignore you. I love that game. And what else? I think I had Luminous and
Yeah. Is
probably one other game. I don't remember.
I remember I never had a PSP, but my younger brother had one, and he had like God of War. He
That was on
had,
PSP.
I think, Uncharted, which was impressive at the time.
Yeah.
Like these great graphics there, and it brings me good memories, like the console, because it reminds me of my brother. But I never played PSP a lot, to be honest. I was more on the Nintendo side, which I believe you are also like a Nintendo type of gamer more than other brands. Am I right? Or
I'm kind of split between them all. I mean, they all have things I like. I definitely like Nintendo a lot. I remember at the time the PSP came out, I remember that was like revolutionary. That you
yeah.
can that have those kinds of graphics in your hand. Now we have switches and like all these other things, and people are like, yeah, whatever. But at the time, that was the really first widely available, portable console unit, I think, that looked like so amazing in your hand. And yeah, but I was a PSP fangirl for a while. Then I was an Xbox fangirl for a long time. And now since the Switch came out, definitely more focused on Nintendo again.
More on the Switch. Yeah, that's the idea I had about you, because even you showed me your necklace, and it's a Game Boy, so
Game Boy necklace. Yep.
yeah. But yeah, I think maybe not necessarily like one platform or one publisher or the other, but I definitely see like Loco Roco as the type of game that you will play, or that you like, or that you enjoy. I have to be honest. I like these type of games, but just because of the cute things. I not necessarily play them, because I was remembering also this other game, Patapon or Patapon.
Yes. So same studio. And I love, and now that you say it, I did have Patabon for the PSP as well. So good.
Like you just see the characters, and you see the world, and you see the colors, and it's just, and now that I think about it, maybe the colors that I see on Patapon are not the ones that you see, right? But yeah,
That's
it's
actually the
beautiful.
point.
Maybe to
But
me is the main character is blue or something. I don't know.
no, you're not that colorblind. It's
No,
it's it's uh
it's yellow,
it's like
orange.
orange and black colors. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of facts about the game is made by Sony Japan, published by Sony. I knew it. This was one. This one was for PSP. I didn't know about the remaster, but now I'm curious. Did you play like the tilting function was now with a controller?
I believe it was. I'm not sure if I turned it off or not, but yeah, that was an option to have it move with the controller, I think.
Okay.
There's also been a bunch of different other versions of Loroco since they made some sequels, and Loroco 2 is excellent as well, but really the one that kind of started it all was my favorite one. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's beautiful. And I actually have an art book of Loco Roco, even when I have to say I'm a fake Loco Roco fan, because I haven't played it. But yeah, remember these GDC book stands?
yes, yep, I do.
That's what I got mine, and usually every year I get at least one of those art books from video games, because they're beautiful. And this year, as you said, because of COVID, GDC didn't happen.
Yep.
Did you miss GDC?
I did, but it was, I don't know, so much. And I mean, I think it's also different. Like, we work at GDC. And so that's like an entire week of nonstop work and
Yeah.
seeing everybody and spending. And I'm, to be honest, a little bit introverted. So I love it. But then at least thankfully I live here in San Francisco and I can go hide for a little bit. And it's nice to my own bed, during all of this. GDC got a lot easier when I moved to San Francisco. But no, I do miss it, and I really miss seeing the community and everyone. And I know GDC Summer was suggested, but now it's going to be online as well. So I'm really hoping that everything is safe enough and okay enough for us to see everyone each again at GDC 2021.
Yeah, hopefully. I agree with you. And that's also another interesting point, not related to the games, but the fact that what we do, we spend most of our time talking to people, right? But that doesn't mean that we are extroverted. And I think most of the evangelists are, I guess, they appear to be extroverted, but in reality, they are not, or we are not, because I wouldn't consider myself either an extroverted. But it's funny that you mentioned that part as well.
Yeah, I like people in doses, and I like to be able to then just like go somewhere and like get a breather and just have like collect my thoughts and then go back out with everyone again. But really kind of I didn't do a lot of public speaking before I got into evangelism. Like my whole life making video games, I've always just been a developer. And,
Hmm.
I was a solo indie dev. So I was kind of used to working by myself. And for me, it was like, I'm just here to geek out and be a nerd about Unity. And I didn't necessarily have like the great skills with people
Yeah.
to do that in the beginning. And so I learned a lot of it. I learned a lot from you and our other colleagues on how to be a good presenter and how to kind of be great with the community. But it was definitely something I had to learn, but you can learn it
Yeah.
and you can have a balance too. So
Yeah. And that also reminds me the first time that we met in person, because we
I
knew each
remember.
other from Twitter. But yeah,
Yes.
okay, tell me when did we met in person?
I remember when I met you on Twitter because I was using Unity and then you were Unity event. Were you an evangelist already? I don't remember, but you were doing Unity stuff on Twitter.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I followed you. And then I think maybe like we liked each other's tweets once or twice or something. And it was also like, oh, fellow Latino in the industry, cool. Um, and then I was interviewing at Unity, and I think I like randomly tweeted you being like, hey, I'm interviewing for like a role at Unity, and like it'd be like so cool if you recommended me. And like I was just being like silly at the time. And then you're like, I don't know you. I'm like, you're gonna know me later. But and so and then I interviewed at Unity. I got accepted in the role, and in the I think I got my acceptance the week of GDC. So you were in town for that GDC, and so
Hmm.
because I got my accepted for the job, they gave me an invite to the Unity GDC parties that were happening, and one of the parties was like a business mixer for Unity developers. And then I saw you there, and then we both looked at each other and we're like, Twitter person. Hi, cool. And then I think like we spoke for all of 2 seconds, and then I don't think I saw you again for like another couple of months. But I remember. I remember
I
you.
No, I think that's not the first time that we met in person.
I'm almost sure that's the first time I met in person. Am I
No.
wrong? Is my life a lie this whole time? When did we meet in person?
I think it was during the same GDC time frame, but it was at Unity
The
user
user
group.
group. It
Yeah,
was at the user group. I thought the
yeah,
user group
yeah.
happened afterwards. Okay.
Well,
Yeah, you're
I'm not
right.
sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that the user group was before the mixer.
It was. It was a pre-GDC like user group thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And I remember, you know what? And I totally remember you judged me because I was eating too many tacos. Like at the that was at the event. And you had said something like, you're eating a lot of those. I'm like, I'm really hungry. Do not judge me. Yes, you're right. Okay. I wasn't too far off. I was off by like a day.
Yeah, but yeah,
So
you were
wrong.
wrong about that. Well, last week I was no 2 weeks ago I was talking to Dan, and I was wrong for like 2 months. You know, I thought I met him at one event, and it was like probably 2 months before, and I didn't remember. But yeah, it was fun. I remember also those days where we had we were a smaller team and we could just be at the same events. Now if there's a GDC, usually it's like, okay, Ashley, you go to this thing, Drew will go to this other thing, and we I think we rarely see each other during those days, even at booth time or whatever. It's not that we're too close together working there, but it's
It'll be like
always
a divide and conquer thing. I think especially with you, with the both of us, we're also the type that when work and stuff is over during GDC, we go run away and hide
yeah.
somewhere to get some like alone time.
my
But
my
the
hideout during GDC is Mel's driving.
I didn't want to say it because I'm like, if I ruin his hiding place, people are gonna know where to find him. But this
Yeah.
is absolutely true. And I want to say, like, I lost Arturo once and I needed to find him for something for GDC related. And we were calling him and we couldn't find him. And we're like, where is Arturo? And I'm like, wait, I ran 2 blocks down to Mel's and he was sitting in the back of Mel's just eating a hamburger and a milkshake. And I'm like, I knew it. I knew he would be here. So you
I
gave us
miss
the
those
hiding place,
days.
not me.
No. I miss every time. I haven't been to San Francisco. I think forever, but I miss the meals. Miss the super duper burgers. I miss the fried food at the Fisherman's Wharf. Uh, yeah,
I
that's.
love I love your passion for junk food. It's like no matter what country, no matter what city you go to, you find the best like fried food or hamburgers or it could be Fisherman's Wharf food or it could be Church's Chicken in Puerto Rico. Like you'll find it and you'll love it.
I always like trying the local food. As in San Juan, the local church's chicken, best thing ever.
I'm doing my best to not just get so angry right now, but I know you
I
had
know.
real local food
Yeah,
and
yeah. And the place that we went to was super cozy. Was super. I love the place. I don't. I guess I wouldn't be able to find the actual place, but I have the pictures in my mind of the place that we went to. Yeah, was it like near next to the sea or something? I remember
it
like.
was San Juan is a city that's along kind of like a bay. And we went to a restaurant called Raíces, and I took you there specifically so you could have mofongo de churrasco. So for folks that don't know, that's kind of a mashed plantain dish with like pork rinds and lots of seasoning and strips of steak, and it is the best food on earth. And me talking about it now is making my stomach growl. And I took Arturo there to get it and he liked it, but apparently Church's chicken was the memorable part of that trip. And then he wonders why we're enemies. But
You're right. You're right. No, but it was.
I will forever like be on your case about that for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, and also you didn't want to take me to La Perla.
I didn't, no. Because it's the first thing. He lands on the island and we walk into San Juan and he asks, where's La Perla? And I go, it's not here. We have to walk there. And he's like, I want to go in there. I'm like, no, we have cameras and things and whatever. And it's like, it's not safe or anything, but you're like the like the Reggaeton videos are filmed there. I want to go see it. And fine. I did take you.
Yeah, we saw the La Perla from like a safe distance.
I took you
I
to like
guess.
the entrada.
Yeah, but yeah, it was fun. Anyway, so back to games. But this is part of this program or these videos to remember these memories because I don't have this with random people. I have
Mhm.
this with my friends, and yeah, it's fun to you know remember these moments and all
Of
these cool
course.
things.
And it's I think that's part of what makes our job really awesome and what we're really fortunate. Just like you've been able to come to Puerto Rico for a Unity event and we got to explore San Juan. It was the same when we did Developer Day in Mexico City and you took me around. You took me to the pyramids in I'm gonna say it wrong, Technochitlán? No, I got it wrong.
Teotihuacan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You
And
didn't want
so
to try the worms or the
I
ants.
did
Well, you
I
just
did
took
try
one.
them.
You just took one.
And it tasted terrible, but I tried it. But I love the chapulines. I
Yeah,
love them.
yeah. That was also a very fun developer day. What that was the first one in 2016.
We co-organized the first developer day that Unity held, and we held it in Mexico City in 2016, I think.
I
Yep.
think
Yep. And it was
we went
awesome.
with Corey to the pyramids.
We did. Yes,
And
we did.
we
Yep.
and we found a dog, and I still have those pictures. A dog at the top of the pyramid.
You wouldn't let me take it. We found a puppy and it was the cutest puppy. It was all by itself. It was a little stray. And I know I'm not supposed to touch it, but it's a dog and I love all the dogs. So I grabbed it and I carried it for a bit. And Arturo was just like, why are you touching that dog? Why are you touching that dog? Put it back. Put the dog back. I'm like, but it's a puppy. It was like it fit in my hands.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it was
that is
cute.
also why you're my enemy, because you wouldn't let me take home the puppy. This is all your own doing.
That's true. And actually, this is great because I know you have this irrational love for pets, particularly like dogs. And the next game, the next game is basically the digital version of having pet, right? Or having lots of animals or creatures. And this next game is Pokemon Crystal. I'm gonna say a couple of facts about the game, and then we can start talking about it.
Okay.
It was published by Nintendo. It was developed by Game Freak, which up until recently, I thought like all the Nintendo games were made by Nintendo. Like I didn't. I would say before starting making games in the past, it was all Nintendo games. Like I was like the moms saying that, oh, your Xbox to every console, right? I was like that. Every game was a Nintendo game, and it was released in December 2000, which is 20 years ago, which is it's crazy. It's an RPG. I was trying to find which engine they use for Pokemon. There's no information that I could find. Most people say that is well, and it makes sense. Like they're a custom engine, but it's hard to track if this engine was used in another game or whatever.
Yeah.
So, first question for you: why Pokemon Crystal in particular?
I and I think I mentioned before when I got my Game Boy Color in the first two Pokemon games, and you would think that was the magical moment for me with Pokemon, like getting my first Pokemon games. Um, I love the game so much, and I want to say that a lot of this is also relevant, I guess, for the time that I lived in, the age that I was. This was in like the early '90s when Pokemon came out,
Mm.
and I was playing it, and then and in Puerto Rico especially, there weren't a lot of girls, at least where I lived. There were not a lot of girls that had Game Boys or let alone played Pokemon. And where I was, it was very much considered a thing for boys, like as they would say in Puerto Rico, cosa de niño, and it was, the boys play Pokemon, the boys have the Game Boy, the girls play with the Barbie dolls. I remember there was like a McDonald's event where you could get either like a Pokemon toy or a Barbie doll or something, and I was so mad that they gave me the Barbie doll. It was a very like boy centric thing, and all the boys at school played, but none of the girls. But I played, and I had my Game Boy, and I was obsessed with the series. But I even like as a young kid, and I must have been 10 around that age. I got a lot of bullying because I played Pokemon, and I was a weird girl and like a weird nerd, and girls don't play Pokemon. And what they would always say is girls don't even exist in Pokemon. And it was true. In the first couple Pokemon games, you just played as, Red, or I guess like the equivalent of like Ash Ketchum.
Hmm.
And there was, and especially at that time in many video games, there wasn't a lot of options to pick your gender when you play, unlike today where we have a lot of games that give us a lot of like flexibility and customization with who we can play as. But I remember Gold and Silver came out. I was obsessed with Gold and Silver. They were beautiful games, and it was still another set of Pokemon games where you play as a boy. And one day my mom randomly surprised me with Pokemon Crystal. And I actually didn't even know that Pokemon Crystal was a thing or had come out. This was before the internet, before you heard news and updates online, and they weren't covering Pokemon on the local radio or newspaper, right? So it's just, if I like the only way I found out about games is that if I saw them on the shelves at like Toys R Us or something. So my mom saw a new Pokemon game came out. She got it for me. I think because I had like a perfect report card or something silly that year. And I looked at it and I was so excited. And I looked at the back of the box. And if you look at the back of the box, the second screenshot down on the bottom, there's a girl character and it says, for the first time ever, a Pokemon game where you could play as a girl. I started screaming. We got home and I tore open the box and I put that beautiful translucent blue cartridge in, and I booted up the game. And when it got to them asking like, the infamous scene, are you a boy or are you a girl? And and I'm like, I'm a girl, I'm a girl. And they showed the character, and for me that was life changing. And I know it sounds so silly and so almost ridiculous because it's just a video game option, right? It's just a character in a video game. But after hearing so long that, girls can't play Pokemon, girls shouldn't play video games, girls, like, you're like, don't do this or don't do that or whatever, it was that validation that, especially as a very young little girl, like, I needed that. And I needed that game in that moment. And that moment told me, you can be what you want to be. It is okay. Go kick ass. Like, sorry, you're gonna have to censor that. But it was, and like, for me, it was just a huge, 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 huge deal. And it made the game so much better. And it made me feel like, instead of pretending and wishing that I could be Ash Ketchum, so I could be a Pokemon trainer, I got to just pretend if I was a Pokemon trainer, right? And like in the series, in the anime, we had Misty and the other like female characters, but there was always a weird disconnect that you could never play as a woman in the games. And so, I noticed that. I think a lot of little girls noticed that. But that's why that game meant so much to me, and it was so good.
I never played this one. I was telling Dan that I stopped playing. Well, I had the yellow version. That was my first Pokemon game. Then I had I forgot. Was that silver and
Yep, silver
gold?
gold. Yep.
Yeah, and then I think I played gold. But anyway, I didn't play this one, and I was doing some research about the game, and I noticed that these character, if you select the female character, she has blue hair.
Yeah, she does.
Okay, it is anything like it? Does it has to do with the way you color your hair? You think
Yes.
it's connected?
It absolutely is connected. For
Cool.
me, I think especially at that time in like the late 90s of video games and anime and cartoons and stuff, all of these characters that I loved happened to be blue. And maybe it was because of the limited palette colors we had in video games at the time. But I remember like the character in Pokemon Crystal, she's like blue hair, like girl. And Sailor Moon, my favorite Sailor Moon character, Sailor Mercury, and she's the nerdy computer girl with the blue hair. In
Is she
the
the one
Legend of
with the short hair?
the short hair, yeah. And then in the Legend of Zelda series, one of my favorite goddess in the whole like series is Nairu, goddess of time. And I had Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages, which is another one of my all-time favorite games for Game Boy Color. She was also like this like awesome blue-haired character. And I guess my brain associated with like, wow, if you have blue hair, you're really cool. And I mean, like, I don't know if I'm cool now, but I have the blue hair, so it's like a step. So, but yeah, no, it's an aesthetic, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I didn't know that. And now the question is, which Pokemon is your favorite Pokemon? Like
I,
the actual creature, not the game.
yes, the actual creature. So it's not from Pokemon Crystal. In all fairness, I love, and you might want to take a guess because of what's above me, like right now. But I,
Oh
oh,
yeah. I
yes.
know. Yeah.
I and with some gifts that you've given me, the everyone thinks I love Pikachu, but the reality is that I am obsessed with Raichus, especially Alolan Raichu, which is basically tropical island Raichu that has a tan and its tail is a surfboard. So I don't care what anyone says. To me, that's Puerto Rican Raichu, and I love it, and it is my favorite Pokemon in existence. And yeah,
so,
it's
so
also
if I go to a Pokédex and I search for this Raichu, it's gonna say Puerto Rican Raichu. That's how I'm
it should.
supposed
If it doesn't, it's wrong.
That's very cool. Yeah, I my favorite one, and nobody's asking me, but I'm gonna say it
I know what it
anyway.
is. Can I guess? I know. Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
You know,
It's
you
it's
know.
Cubone, right?
Yeah, it's Cuban. And actually, I was watching recently Detective Pikachu. Have you seen that one?
Yes. It was really good.
Uh,
I liked
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. It made me think, oh, it would be so cool if Pokemon were real and this little Cuban, because in my mind, Cuban was not that small, right? To me, it was like bigger. So when I
Really?
saw him,
Oh.
yeah, super small, it was like, oh, it would be great to have this small Pokemon as a pet.
One
But
tiny Cubone pet. Yeah.
yeah, super. But it's creepy. You know the story behind Cubans, right?
Sad, sad story
Yeah, it's
behind
super
Cubone.
sad, and it's also creepy having your pet with a skull of, you know. Anyway, it's good to
The
know
whole
that. Uh,
Yeah, I would say the whole Cubone story is part of what made the games great. Like, when you had to go to Lavender Town and you had to go to the ghost tower and then the the,
yeah,
the mother Marowak and all these things and looking back and talking about these things, it's like, wow, Team Rocket straight up murdered that Pokemon. And like a lot of like kind of like really dark themes for like a kids game and a lot of spookiness, but it's yeah, no. I love Cubone. It's so cute.
he is cute. Um, okay, so we went from Loroco, super cute, to Pokemon. I would say super cute as
So
well.
cute.
And now your next game is not cute at all, I think.
I'll be the judge of that. Maybe I think it's really cute.
Okay, okay. So your next game is Red Dead Redemption 1. We have to specify,
Yes,
right?
and to be extremely clear to people, it's Red Dead Redemption, the one before Red Dead Redemption 2, not Red Dead Revolver, which some
Yes.
people consider Red Dead Redemption 1. So no, just Red Dead Redemption. Yes.
Which is a game developed by Rockstar San Diego, published by Rockstar Games. It was released in May 2010, which is also, well, it's 10 years old. It doesn't feel super old. It's an open world action adventure type of game. And the engine here is actually something easy to find. It's made by with an engine called Rage, which stands for Rockstar Advanced Game Engine. It's the same engine that's used for GTA 4, GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption 2. If GTA 6 ever exists, then probably they will use the same engine. But yeah, those are the facts. Now the first question is, well, you are you a fan of the Wild West type of things?
Not
Which
at
you don't
all.
seem like you are. Yeah.
I think it's funny because it's very weird. I don't like westerns like in movies or like traditional media or in books. I wasn't particularly interested. I love Western video games. I don't know. Maybe it's because of horses and my brain's like animals. Like I don't know what the reason is, but it's not just that. Like I remember like I think it was a Flash game or something that came out like Westerado around the same time that um Red Dead Redemption did. And it was just like I remember just having a year in my life where all I played were Western video games and it was my obsession. And I just, had my cowboy hat. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Like I love these games. Um, I'm still processing why I love them. I think it's interesting. But to me, I think Red Dead Redemption was especially fascinating because it was the first big AAA game that I played after the moment I realized I wanted to work in video games. So that was the
Okay.
first time I played a game of that caliber with a completely different viewpoint and lens. I wasn't playing necessarily just as a gamer now, but I was playing as a developer who could really appreciate and understand the detail and work and effort that went into that game. And to me, I had just started into game development. Like I don't even think I had like officially changed my studies yet or anything. I remember spending an entire summer playing through Red Dead Redemption and being fascinated with like how are they getting the light to pass through like the trees like this? How are they like how are they handling all these characters and all these animations? Like to me, like I was still just learning the magic of game development, but I knew just enough to know that what they did was so technically impressive at the time. So I think like in my baby game developer's eyes, I was just like, whoa. And I think that helped me fall in love with the story, but I think what really kind of kept me there and brought me in, and this I don't know, like I don't know if this is great to say or not, right? But I didn't play many games at all before then that even had Latinos. And
Mm-hmm.
there was Latino characters in the game. Like there were Mexican characters and they were actually speaking in Spanish. Like I could walk
Yeah.
through the Mexican towns and I could hear them cursing at me. And I thought it was hilarious. And that was a really awesome experience as well. Like not in like I hate that like most of the Latino characters in that game, not all of them, but like a bunch of them were like enemies and not good guys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so which I think has kind of been an unfortunate area where Latinos have been relegated in video games. A lot has changed since then, but I think that at the time it was just cool to see, cool to appreciate, like hearing Spanish in the background, playing this awesome story, and playing John Marston, this character who was an absolute gentleman and was just really trying to save his wife and kid. And that was so different than other Rockstar games at the time. Like I really couldn't get into the whole like gangster bikini girl vibe of GTA. I wasn't. That is like the antithesis of the kind of games that I'm into. um I like playing GTA now to like launch my cars off of things and like make things explode and stuff. Like that's fun. But I just couldn't get into the story of those games. And I didn't think I would like the story of Red Dead Redemption. But when I learned that it was just a guy trying to live his life
Mm-hmm.
and trying to kind of quite literally redeem himself, and you know, I was super drawn in. And I think that was the first video game where I actually cried. Like I sobbed. And I'm not really one to cry in kind of media like that. But I was that. Is it okay to spoil it? I think it's been like 10 plus years. It's okay to
Yeah, it's
spoil
been 10
it, right?
years. You can spoil it. And
And
I'm
Red Dead
playing the
Redemption
video
2.
of the game here, so probably something will spoil as well.
Red Dead Redemption 2 is already out already as well. But that's like that specific scene where you're running, like you get word, like they tell you where your wife and child is, and you have to run basically through like one of the farthest points in the game, through the forest, over the mountains. The sun like is rising to your home, knowing that your wife and child are going to be there. Like I was so much like tears were streaming down my face as I'm like riding this horse, like finally getting to be reunited with like the family. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm way too into this game right now. Like this is like why am I feeling these feels? Too many feelings. But it was really impactful and I didn't expect it to be. And maybe that's why it was. But it was such a brilliantly made game, and it still stands up so well today. Like you play that game today, it's like if it was released recently. Like it's so good. So
Yeah, no, totally agree. I probably will disagree with how it looks today because I was playing Red Dead
compared
Redemption. Yeah.
compared to the new one, yeah. But I guess what I mean more is like it aged well. I guess like a good animated film, like it's still fun to watch even many years after it has passed, right? It's like it's still you play some video games now that were released 10, 20 years ago, and you're like, how did I play this? Where's
Yeah.
the UI? Like what how did any of us survive the early era of video games?
Yeah.
But I think that Red Dead Redemption holds up pretty well still.
And,
So
and and I love what you said about Latin characters. And I have two moments in my life with Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. The first one, there's this part when you go to Mexico, or this fake Mexico thing, right? And then you have, or you buy like a house where you sleep or something, and they have I don't word it, I don't know the name in English, like the thing that you put on top of your bed sheets bed
a
sheets
quilt.
that thing, yeah. They had one that looks super Mexican, and I swear the pattern on that one is the pattern that my grandfather had on his house in Mexico. So it was super exciting. And for the second one, they don't go to Mexico, or yeah, there are some like wings to Mexico, but I don't think they go to Mexico. But the game happens in like a fake Texas, which is the place that I live at right now. So it was funny to see how things connect, right? And it
Yeah.
happens like how it happens in real life. Like for those people who don't know, like Texas used to be part of Mexico many years ago, and then I'm working here, and feels like, even when it feels like it's the United States, uh, it feels also like, okay, this was this is similar to where I'm from, right? Like the people, some people are like come from the same, I guess, like the same people
Descendant.
that are, yeah, the same descendants. So it's great to see, and I'm not sure if this was intended by the developers, but it's great to see these things happening virtually as they happen in real life. So it's super exciting. It was a surprise to me knowing that Red Dead Redemption was your one of your favorite games, but it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, if I had to guess, probably Red Dead Redemption will have been my last guess about your favorite games. Did you play the second one?
I got the second one, and I gotta be honest, the first two chapters or whatever were the most longest, boring chapters of video game I've ever played. I stopped playing. I couldn't, like, to me, having to play through those chapters was considered a chore, and I would have it like on my list. I'm like, gotta finish the game. And then I realized I'm like, if I have to put like on a to-do list to finish this video game, if it's not something that I want to dive into, with so
Yeah.
many other games that I want to dive into, I'll put it aside for later. I am meaning to finish it, but it just wasn't a priority at the time.
And it makes total sense. And this happened to me with Doom Eternal. I've been playing it for 6 hours now, and I went to how long to beat, and probably it's gonna take me another 12 hours or something. And I said like, I'm having fun, but it's too long. I can
Yep.
easily play 4 or 5 other games. And yeah, I see what you're saying about Red Dead Redemption 2. I feel the same way, uh, but I don't know, I got involved in the graphics. The second one is also impressive. I the same things that you mentioned, like how the light rays go through the trees, uh, like the huge world that's always present. There are never like pop-ups, or those are barely visible. You have a lot of characters. It's great. It's impressive. I think I got hooked because of just the how beautiful the world was. The story was also cool. Um, but yeah, probably this one. I'm not gonna spoil Red Dead Redemption 2, which
Yeah.
was released like 2 years ago or something. So
Not enough time has passed for spoilers, but yeah, no, the first Red Dead Redemption was just so beautiful, and it's. I think what's also interesting about it for me is, and I want to give like a brief like content trigger warning for folks because I might touch on a heavy topic potentially for some, but I remember my utter shock when I was riding my horse to an empty field and I just saw a man sobbing in the middle of nowhere, hours away from any city nearby. And as I was approaching him, he just took out a gun and shot himself in the head. No
okay,
quests, not related to anything going on in the game, not near anything. And what I learned later were these kind of, and maybe folks who are experienced with like the GTA universe and stuff had seen little things like this before, but that whole concept of like the random encounters that are like randomly generated in place like throughout the world. The like for example the broken carriage by the side of the road, if you will go help, it wasn't related to any quest, but
mm-hmm.
it's still something that you could help that person and like help them, or you try to help them and you get killed, right? my
Yeah,
my
yeah.
favorite random encounter is this like one Latina girl who's walking around like I guess like on the in like the area near Mexico in the game. She's walking down the street and she's like, oye, tú me ayuda, like, hey, will you help me? And I remember the first time I'm like hearing this, I'm like, yeah, I'll help you. And like I like rode up on my horse. She straight up like judo kicked me off the horse, got on my horse and ran away. And I'm just like, you know what? Like respect. Like like I get it. Like I respect your hustle. So she took my horse, but it was just kind of cool to see like a weird kind of, and I know that they probably didn't intend for it to be portrayed that way, but that was like kind of like one of my like Latina badass moments in video games.
This thing that you're mentioning about these like random encounters, I usually don't do side quests while I'm playing games. Like I just want to beat the main story and that's it. I don't care about 100%. I'm not sure if you care about those things. If you play the games to get all the achievements or things.
I'm the opposite. I mean, I don't do it necessarily for the achievements, but I love the details. Any little details I could find. And for me, random encounters are part of what makes the world feel immersive and natural. For me, the number one thing I have to have in a video game, no matter what it is immersion. If I'm not immersed, I don't want to play the game. And that was my problem with Red Dead Redemption 2. It wasn't hitting that emotion trigger for me. But the or immersion, I should say. But the in Red Dead Redemption, like for me, I felt like there was so much effort into making that world believable and feel real and feel like you're part of it. And I think the random encounters were a part of that. I think the wildlife was a huge part of that. Like, being able to hunt and and find all these animals and do like tracking and such. And for me, I just went off and kept doing random things like picking flowers, like, and it to me, it's the tiny details like that. And you can ask people who have watched me play different games like BioShock and such, where I'm just staring out the window looking at all the animations that are happening out in the ocean, and they're like, there's nothing out there, it's just fish. And I'm like, yeah, but look how they did this, like look at that. Like I'll go into like a really detailed like statue and like look at the details and stuff, and they're like,
Yeah.
Ashley, play the actual game. And it's like I feel like all the other like kind of like side things distract me a bit, but it's I'm definitely not a completionist, but I love seeking out those little tiny details. And I always go like, thank you, developers. I see what you did there. This probably took you hours to put in. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's great because yeah, I think that many developers, and when I say developers, I don't mean just programmers, because this is a discussion that we've had internally so many years now
yep.
about like, does the word developer means programmers? In my opinion, in my personal opinion, no. Like an accountant working at Rockstar is a developer, right? Like they're working on the game because that is needed. But yeah. Anyway, when a developer works on something, there's a high chance that what that person is working on, people won't even notice, right? Like, oh, what did you do? I'm the modeler of all the socks on the FIFA franchise, and it's like, oh yeah, people don't pay attention to that. Maybe they do, but these things. There are many things that some people who are not game developers might not, similar to how it happens like in movies, right? Like we're not in the movies industry, probably we don't know the effort, or I don't know the effort that it takes to put something on screen. I just say I've been complaining about Hulk in the Avengers latest movie, in Avengers Endgame, that it doesn't look like great, but it's the same thing. Like I have no idea how difficult it is to do something like that, right? But anyway, so on to the next game, which is also a game that should have like an Ashley seal of approval in the box, because it's one of those games that I definitely think like, oh yeah, this is something that you will play because of your love for animals or creatures in general. So the next game is Zoo Tycoon.
Yes.
So tell us about Zoo Tycoon. Why is one of your favorite games?
So, a little bit of context for folks. I love video games nearly all my life since I got that first Game Boy, but I never knew that you could be a game developer. I think kind of similar to Arturo. I'm like, yes, all games are made like by Nintendo and Sony in Japan. Like, you have to live in Japan if you want to make video
That's
games. And
another thing, another idea that I had growing up as a kid. Like in Mexico, it was like, no, games are just made by people from Japan, and that's all I know.
yeah, I never growing up saw a game from Latin America or knew of games being made in Latin America. And I'm sure there probably were like early ones, especially like, software and such. But like, growing up and especially on the consoles, not only did we not see people like us working on games, but we weren't even really represented in games until kind of later on. So it was, I just never considered that you could have a career in video games. So I just thought, after high school when I graduated, I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to major in college? I'm like, I don't know. I like animals, zoology. And so I studied zoology. I worked in a lab with like tarantulas and other things. And later I switched to game development. But before that, in the height of my animal obsession, and really I wanted to be a zoologist and work in conservation efforts for animals, and I wanted to work at a zoo focused on conservation. So these were zoos like the Bronx Zoo in New York or the San Diego Zoo in San Diego, California. And I was dreaming of that. Like Steve Irwin was my hero when I was a kid. And then this game came out called Zoo Tycoon. And my father saw it and he's like, well, I have to get this for Ashley. And it was a PC game and he sent it over to me. And it's a game that if you played not Zoo Tycoon, if you played Roller Coaster Tycoon, it's pretty much the same thing. You are managing your own zoo. So you create your zoo. It's a simulation game. You start out with a completely empty field and you have a couple of animals depending on the mode that you're playing, different modes, but you start out with some animals. You have to purchase the animals. Then you need to go to a very complex terrain building tool where you could place fences, you could terraform the terrain, you could change the flooring, like so like the base terrain is grass, but if you're making a polar bear exhibit, they want snow and salt water. So then you would have to like put salt water in and then like the snow, and all of this costs money and you have to like manage the money properly in your zoo, like a very kind of standard simulation game. But to me, it was like many of the other games on this list, like it was just pure magic. It was, I could have both my love for animals and video games in a single game, and the game was just so good. And I remember, and I'm still mad at the developers to this day. Like if I ever meet one of them or whoever was the one that was responsible for this, I'm going to like link them back to this video and say, I said in the past how mad at you I was for this. The tutorial for Zoo Tycoon, the way it starts out, was a very excellent in-game tutorial. I think especially for the time. This game was what? Early
2001.
Yeah, early 2000s. So the it starts out with them showing, okay, so welcome to your first zoo. You have to make an exhibit for an animal. Click here, like click the fence tool and click here and like place some points for the fence and then put your animal inside. And you're like, okay, so you follow the step and like another pop-up comes up. Great job. Now time for the next step. And then you go through and there's other exhibits already in like this like tutorial zoo. And then they said something along the lines of, okay, now use the delete fence tool and delete delete one of the fence pieces in the lion exhibit. Mind you, I'm like 11. So I'm like, okay. And I delete the fence. All of a sudden the lions just run out and attack everybody and like kill people. And I'm like, oh my God. And then the tutorial window pops up. Why would you do that? And I'm like, no, I didn't know. You told me to do it. Like you told me to do it, video game. Like that wasn't me. And like I felt so bad. I felt like a genuine murderer. Like I killed people. Like that haunted me for years. So whoever was responsible for that, you probably messed up a whole generation of kids. But it was worth it. That game was just, it was so good. And to me, what I admire as a developer about that game is the brilliance of their expansion packs. Lots of games get DLC these days. You know, we're very used to the DLC content. At the time, we called them the expansion packs, and you would have to go to the store and buy a CD and then put that CD in your computer to get this new like extra content for the game. I feel really old just talking about this. And
Well, you should, because that was 2 decades ago. So
don't say that. In my brain, it's still like it was only 10 years ago, right? No. So they really, I think, did a perfect job of making these like kind of like early versions of DLC offer very tightly related but completely different content. Like I feel like so many games have DLCs now where it's like get a new skin or like get a certain horse or get animation for your character, like a dancing emo or something. And Zoo Tycoon was like, here's like entire new modes of gameplay with like 50 more new animals. And so the first Zoo Tycoon was, you built like a regular kind of standard zoo, lions, bears, elephants. Then the second expansion pack was Marine Mania. So Zoo Tycoon Marine Mania was the SeaWorld expansion, basically, where you could now make a water park and you would have to actually build like the stadium and the tank for the orcas. Like, and the scale of that is really big. And you have to build like these huge water park environments. And you even had like the level of detail that you had to consider and apply. Like you had to make the training schedule for the dolphins and the orcas to do the tricks like they do in the actual SeaWorld in real life. And it was just like the same game, right? Like zoo management style things, but a completely different form of gameplay with completely different considerations, but still like so intrinsically linked. The third expansion pack was Dinosaur Digs. And Dinosaur Digs was the Jurassic Park basically expansion pack for Zoo Tycoon, where you got dinosaurs and massive electric fences. And it was, you got to create like your own Jurassic Park. And so for me, that was like, it wasn't just an expansion pack. Those were like three completely new separate games. It was like, imagine your favorite game gets two entire new sequels made for it at the same time, and you could get them together. Like it was amazing at the time. And I don't see that happen as often these days.
And you just mentioned something that gave me a nice flashback, because I remember for Game Boy Advance there was this game called Jurassic Park Builder, which is similar to what you just described, just for the Game Boy Advance, which with way more limited graphics. But I remember playing that with my cousin because he loved Jurassic Park and all and these type of like management games, which I don't really like that much. I think they are, and throughout these videos, I've noticed that basically I say I don't like any type of game. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of these because I'm not very patient. So to me, it's difficult to manage these type of things and wait for things to happen and things like that. But yeah, it was a fun flashback. And I want to ask you, similar to how I asked you about your favorite Pokemon, what's your favorite animal or zoo animal?
What do you think is my favorite animal? I like asking people that.
Okay, let's make another series of videos. And in this case, it's gonna be top 5 animals.
Ashley's animals.
Yeah, I will say your favorite animal is the dog, right? The top one.
I'll give you this. It's my favorite domestic animal. So you know what? No, I'm even lying. Cows are my favorite domestic animal. I love cows, but no, my
Cows.
cow. No, my favorite animal, like wild animal that you would actually see in a zoo, um, giant anteaters. I'm obsessed with giant anteaters. In a perfect world, I would have one. They're the cutest with their long noses and their fluffy legs. And I realize I sound insane talking about how much I love and how cute anteaters are, but they're just perfect. And I love the San Francisco Zoo because they have 2 anteater exhibits. So that makes it the best zoo. That's my criteria.
I've been wanting to go to the San Francisco Zoo since I joined Unity, because usually it's like, oh, I'm in San Francisco, there's the zoo nearby, but I don't think it's too close to the city, right?
It's in the city. It's close. I mean, you have to kind of like drive out a bit or, spend a bit of time on public transportation compared to where we normally are in the city around Unity's headquarters. It's like on the complete opposite side of San Francisco from where Unity is.
2 blocks away from the Unity office is too far from me when I go to San Francisco. Yeah, but I mean, also you also mentioned the San Diego Zoo, which gave me another flashback. I had the Viewmasters. Did you have Viewmasters?
Oh my God, Viewmasters! Wow.
I had one disc when where Sesame Street, which in Spanish is Plaza Sésamo. Was that? Yeah. They went to the San Diego Zoo, and it was amazing because it was in 3D. It was so cool. So yeah,
back in the day.
That was and also the VR, the original VR.
VR. We joke, but at Unity headquarters, if you come into our lobby, we actually have an entire wall full of Viewmasters. So you know that, but telling for the viewers.
Yeah. No. I know, and I think this is not related to Unity, but usually when there's no COVID. And during like GDC times 2 years ago, we opened up the office for people to, of course, register, but they could go to the office and get to know the engine friends, right?
Yes.
So
that's going to be our new title now. Hello, we're your engine friends at Unity. Like that's how we introduce ourselves for everything from now on. Thank you.
Just to wrap up, Zoo Tycoon, it was published by Microsoft. And I think they still publish the latest Zoo Tycoon, right? They released
No.
Zoo Tycoon recently. Oh, okay.
So Planet Zoo, and I will
Oh,
tell
you're
you about
right.
all the different zoo games, but Planet Zoo is by Frontier. Frontier is the creator of the Planet Coaster series. So they are not related to Zoo Tycoon. Blue Fang Games were the creators, I believe, of Zoo
Yep.
Tycoon. And there was a couple of sequels that came out. There was some like Game Boy DS versions. I got that. I hated it. I that was like the one game I think I ever returned because it was just that bad, which made me sad. But it was then they made I if I remember correctly, when the Xbox One was gonna come out, I think they like one of like the flagship kind of games was a Zoo Tycoon game. And I remember it got terrible reviews, and I didn't have an Xbox One at the time, so I didn't play it. But after that, the Zoo Tycoon series I think kind of died out. Um, and now in its place has sprung Planet Zoo, which is incredible. And I was very tempted to list that as my current favorite zoo game, but I know that none of my passion and kind of the experience I have with Zoo Tycoon, the original one, would replace what I have with Planet Zoo. But anyways,
On which console did you play Planet Zoo, the latest one?
this Planet Zoo is PC, it's a PC game.
Okay, yeah, that's what I got confused because I just got the Game Pass by the
Okay.
Xbox Game Pass, and I saw Planet. Yeah, I thought it was Zoo Tycoon or something by the Tycoon series, but yeah, you're right. It's Planet Zoo, and it's on it shows up on the Microsoft Store. Okay, that's pretty cool. I also love zoos. I also love animals in general. But now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever played like a game about managing animals or taking care of animals besides Nintendogs. Remember Nintendogs? Of course, you
Oh,
had Nintendogs.
I had all the Nintendogs, excuse me, like all the expansions and everything. It was so good. I mean, for me, and especially at the time, like I guess this is gonna sound silly, but I couldn't get a lot of experience with animals and like learning about them as I was growing up, right? And so, like in Puerto Rico, we had a zoo. It's kind of a sad zoo, but it's also really far away from where I lived, and and I learned a lot through those games, and it wasn't just that Zoo Tycoon game. I actually had maybe about 6 different games that I was obsessed with about being a veterinarian, about being an animal caretaker, and I will play all these games on loops. And to me, I'm like, after I beat all these video games, I will be a veterinarian. Like it was like that's how it works. You don't have to go to college. Just beat the games and you'll have the skills that you need. And I think what like at the time, especially back in like the early 90s games, they would like do things where if you clicked on a part of a game, you could print something like print a certificate. And like Pokemon had this where you could like
Yeah.
print your Pokedex completion certificate with a Game Boy printer. The vet games I had and like the Zoo Tycoon type style games I had, it's like you can print your like animal caretaker certificate. And I had all of them up in my room. And yeah, no, I was a pretty obnoxious animal nerd with my video games early on. And I kind of grew out of that, but I still love those games. It's a good nostalgia for me, and it gets me in a nice like kind of like happy Zen mode when I play them.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, Nintendogs, and actually, I think I played it more as a wannabe game developer because I was impressed on how something like that could exist, right? Like,
Yeah.
how is this virtual pet reacting to you? And it was just crazy. The dogs were very lifelike. Like you could bond with your dog because it was, of course, the graphics were primitive, but I don't know, it felt real. Unlike, let's say, a Pokemon, because
Yep.
in my case, I don't bond with a Pokemon because it looks like too pixelated, and the newest ones, they are too cartoony. So at least I know, like, okay, this is
Have
not.
you played the new ones? They have like a Nintendogs mode in the new ones where you can
Well,
like pet your Pokemon and stuff and play with them.
I played the Let's Go. No, no, Let's Go Pikachu.
Yeah, let's go Pikachu. That's one of the new ones. No, the one I'm thinking is like the latest one that I already forgot the name, but
Yeah, no, that was the latest
yeah.
one that I played, and probably that was like 2 years ago. And now that you mention, I think there's There's some more. I don't remember, but anyway, I like Pokemon. I love Pokemon, but I don't bond with the Pokemon. But in Nintendogs, it was so cool.
I
But yeah,
think, and I don't want to draw on like the game topic more, but you're also giving me a huge nostalgia hit for like one of my other like huge favorite games, which was the Pets series. And to me, that was like the original Nintendogs.
T
So
E
this
T
was,
Z.
yes, that was
Okay.
the OG Nintendogs, and that was like for Windows 95. And but it was brilliant at the time, and like the level of like intelligence that those dogs had, and it was very ragdoll kind of physics. They were just made up of like little sphere shapes, and that's it, like fuzzy spheres. Just a 2D game. Brilliant, brilliant game, was a huge influence in my life as well. And for me, Nintendogs was like that game, but brought to life with like actual realistic looking dogs. And it was, oh, too good. So,
Was that game part of like Bratz, the movie, or the IP?
no, I don't think so, but no, not at all. Not everything you see in the 90s, it was just cool to end everything with a Z. There
Okay.
was also a game called Babies, like ends with a Z. You had one
Yeah.
that ended
I,
with a Z.
was this game by Ubisoft? I kind of feel like it
Pets,
was.
yeah, Pets was by Ubisoft.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Yeah.
There.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I always thought those were related, like pets and brats and all those kind of things that ended with a Z that were
It was
related.
just the
But
90s. It was a weird time.
I know. I know. Okay. So that was Zoo Tycoon. Just to mention something, I've been wanting to make a game about haunted houses, like if you
Okay.
go to a haunted house, like it's basically something inside a theme park, but with the simulation and administration type of gameplay. You have to scare people and you have multiple haunted houses.
Fascinating. Why did you share that on the street? You gave people the idea.
Oh, so somebody please make the game, because yeah, I don't think I'll make
You
that
don't
game
have
anytime
time.
soon. Yeah, but I think at least I would like to play something like that, because I like horror and monsters and these type of things, and I also like games. I'm not a big fan of the genre, but yeah, that will be something fun to
It
to
sounds
do.
like fun. I want to say I will play it, but I am the number one worst person for haunted houses on this earth. I tried to walk into one once, and somebody jumped out and screamed at me, and I just turned around and walked back out the front door. I'm like, no, I can't. No, no, I can't.
Yeah, no, I used to hate those, but when I was kid. Now, recently I went to.
Now you're brave and strong. You can
I
take the
am.
haunted house.
I went to the haunted mansion in Disney
That's not a
World.
real haunted mansion, though.
It
That's like
is.
Disney light version.
Yeah, no, it's just like comedy. But there's another one. Well, it's not a haunted house either. It's the Walking Dead in Universal Studios, I think.
I've never been to Universal Studios, so I wouldn't know.
Uh,
But
yeah, we were thinking about going, but it was Disney, right?
we
Like
were gonna
last
go to
year.
we go to LA so much that we're like, let's go to Disney. And then you and I are always be like, this year we'll go to Disney. And then you never went to Disney. So I went. You weren't
Mm,
there. You didn't want to
yeah,
go. Oh, you left early. You flew out a day early.
but you gave me a gift, which is my
I
Monsters
did give you a gift.
University
Yes.
hat, which is great. Every time, I'm not sure if people are just being nice when I go to pick up my pizza or my food or whatever, but every person tells me like, "Oh, that's a nice hat." Probably they say the same thing to every person, but it makes me feel great because people recognize the hat. So it's
That's just the script of the pizzeria. You're not special. Everyone's like, hello, here's your pizza, nice hat. Hi, here's your pizza, nice hat.
yeah, just
It
tip,
is a nice
right?
hat. It's a very nice hat though. And I think, I don't know, it's like it's cool to have it because it's like the hat that the students wore, right? And so like that makes it kind of like more fun to wear than rather just like a standard Disney logo or a standard Monsters Inc.
Yeah,
logo.
yeah.
It's like the actual university hat. And it's even like worn out, like
Yeah,
fake.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember. Did you? Yeah, probably you saw the Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, yeah.
So there's Chip, the
The
small
teacup.
teacup,
Mhm.
and Chip has these, like, I don't know the word in English, but has a piece of himself like broken.
He has a chip of himself missing. That's why he's
Yeah,
called Chip.
yeah. Right. And my mom took me and my brother to Disney on Ice, which is this thing.
I
Probably.
remember
Yeah, and they were giving raspados, which what's the word in English for that?
shaved ice,
Those things.
piraguas in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. And my mom saw that the teacup was broken. So she went back. My mom is not a Karen, but she went back and said, like, oh, can you change this one because it's broken? And the poor lady was like, oh, I'm sorry, but all of these are the same. All of those are broken. And yeah, they didn't know that that was part of the character, similar to the Monsters University hat, which is also like worn out and looks like it was scratched, but no, it's like
It's new. It's like that. That's hilarious. Oh my god.
that. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to your next game, which is the last game, which is a game that I don't understand, and I feel bad, but I don't understand this game. I played it for a couple of minutes. I was not hooked up. But yeah, so tell us about Binding of Isaac.
Binding of Isaac. This is another one of those games where I say I love it and everyone's like, "What? Why?" That's not a bright, colorful, happy game, and it
That's
doesn't
right.
have animals. But oh my god, if I have any game in my Steam library where I have an unreasonable amount of hours put into it, it is Binding of Isaac. I don't even know why. It's to me, it's everything I love in a game. It's immersive, but and especially as I got older, I realized that I don't really have the time for huge, massive open world adventure games. Like, which I think maybe was a big reason why Red Dead Redemption 2 didn't stick for me.
Mhm.
I love round based games. So a game that I can just jump in, play a couple of rounds, and peace out. You know, and for me, I also love bullet hell games and I love roguelikes. And all of these things combined has given me Binding of Isaac pretty much. And it's weird because it's normally I would never go for something that had the type of story that Binding of Isaac has.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also one of those games that I discovered as I was just entering the video game industry and becoming a game developer. And then, of course, the quintessential indie game, the movie, came out, and Edward McMillan was in that movie, and Binding of Isaac was in that movie, and or the Super Meat
Super
Boy,
Meat Boy.
Super Meat Boy. But I saw his work there, and I got to know of him, and then I found about Binding of Isaac, and it just the level of replayability blew my mind at the time. I and I'm not saying that other games like this didn't exist. I'm just saying that this was the first one that I had played that I had clicked with enough to realize that I could play 200 rounds of Binding of Isaac and I'm still finding new things. I'm still finding new boss characters. I'm still figuring out new secrets. I'm still unlocking new endings. Maybe it's taking me 200 hours to do that because I'm not great at the game, but it's for me, it's like the ultimate like cathartic game to play where I'm like really stressed out. I just want to play a video game for 20 minutes and then go back to work. Like I get all my energy out in Binding of Isaac. And it's I never thought it would be the kind of game that I would love, but I just really, really do love it. And for me, I think especially is that despite the dark topics that the game covers, and the game, like for those of you who haven't played it, the game, like a lot of the pickup items and the things that your character can consume or use are very strange. You play as a child who is essentially being abused by his religious fanatic mother. So he hides in the basement of his house and then just picks up random scraps in the basement for power ups. And this could be everything from old dog food to like needles and pins to empty steroid syringes. Like it's just weird, but it somehow all comes together in a oddly compelling story. And with all the hundreds of items, as you pick them up, they all give your character different effects. So your main, I guess, the way that you play the game is that you control your little character named Isaac. There's other characters as well, but you control Isaac and you go through this procedurally generated kind of dungeon area that is his basement.
Mhm.
And you shoot tears at different enemies that appear in each of the different rooms. And the power-ups that you can pick up can affect your stats, like how quickly you can walk, how many tears you can shoot, the material properties of your tears. They could be psychic tears. They could be, armor piercing tears, right? And it's just, you have like this little kid just like crying at his enemies. The best part of that game to me is layering all the objects that you collect and layering all those power-ups to just create absolute chaotic situations in the game. Like my favorite combo is getting some kind of homing power-up for my tears so that they follow and focus on enemies. There's also another power up that just surrounds your character in a wall of tears that just like crush anything that it goes by. So when you combine both of those items, you just have this massive wall of tears that just kill all the enemies around you, and you just stay still and do nothing. Like and like unlocking those combinations takes, it's just a lot of it is just the procedural generation, the luck, the knowing how to play the game, and like, you know, it's all like a whole balancing act, and like it's part getting lucky, part kind of like being strategic about how and when you grab your power-ups. And to me, it's so rewarding if I have a great power-up. And also when you get these power-up combinations, you get some kind of cosmetic item applied to you. So like you'll pick up the Book of Satan and you'll get little goat horns. You can pick up, as I'm saying this out loud, I realize how horrible this game is. I'm like, you can find the head of your dead cat, and if you find the rest of its body parts, you can turn into a floating kitty. And I'm like, wow, this sounds very horrible to describe. I swear it's a really fun game and it's a really good game. But it's just so rewarding then, like at the end, when you kind of beat the game and you beat the final boss, you might see like 50 cosmetic items on your character that you can't even see your character underneath all the different like layers of images that are applied to it. And my favorite thing is just taking a screenshot and being like, that's how good my game was. I can't even see my character. So that's my Binding of Isaac rant. I know, like I see it in your face. You're like, yeah, this game, like, it's so good.
No, you know why? While you were talking about this game, I studied psychology, and I kind of see the progress of you as a gamer, like starting from like a super cute game, Loroco, and then now in Binding of Isaac.
So the
It's
lesson
like,
here is that becoming a game developer ruins you.
yeah, kind of. I don't know. No, but it's great, and I also think that for many people, or many game developers, when we watched indie game the movie, many things like clicked on us, right? Like I think I was already making games, but I didn't quite understand many of the things that they talk about in the movie. And yeah, as you mentioned, Edmund Macmillan was one of the developers of Meat Boy, Super Meat Boy, and all those games. Which also I think that these guys are probably like multi-millionaires because every console they put the game there. And if I recall correctly, the tool that they use is Flash, or was Flash, for
Yep.
these games. So yeah, they have the game, and they release any new console will have at least Binding of Isaac, if not also Super Meat Boy, which is great. It was released in 2011, which is 9 years ago. Also, I think the game, that's one thing that I like about the game, also doesn't feel old. The first versions of Meat Boy looks like pixelated and those things, but Super Meat Boy, which was like, I think uses like vector type of graphics, it also, it looks like modern. The gameplay also plays like modern, or feels great, so it doesn't feel old. And that's actually a great achievement about these developers. Now, I have a question. You mentioned, and I've heard about these, the how deep Binding of Isaac can be, right? Like if you remove like the gameplay and all these things, if you just stick to the story that you mentioned about this guy that is abused, which I thought he was like a fetus or that word, like an unborn
It's
baby.
like a baby. It's a little boy.
But he
Yeah.
was alive at one point. He was not like murdered before.
I don't I don't think so. I didn't interpret it that way. I interpret him as
Okay,
being
no, I don't know.
yeah.
It's just that the character looks kind of
Yes.
like that thing.
It looks fetus like. He does look like he just bald, no hair, no clothing. It's just a
Yeah.
tiny little sprite. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think the story in this game it's a very important part of it, or it could, or the game will hold up even if it didn't have any type of story?
I think that this game could have worked with other types of stories, but I don't think it would have had the impact that it had if it wasn't the story that it contains now. And I think part of that is especially at the time, and I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but like a lot of these things were really good and really important at the time they came out, right? And so it's definitely an edgier game, but I think it was an interesting outlet for a lot of people who had a lot of difficulties processing a lot of things that happen in religious communities. It was very interesting seeing how even the topics of child abuse and religious fanaticism can affect people, and really like the darkness of it all, and it I think it did it in a way that didn't glorify it but just highlighted it. And you really kind of learn and like see and understand like this game is good and you're running around like you're shooting these characters and it's fun, but really what's happening is really sad and really concerning. It makes you think like there are people who this happens to in the real world, not going through levels and levels of dungeons and basements and facing monsters, right? But you know and I think especially for younger folks that play, it was an interesting outlet to really explore what religion means to them. Not everything religious in that game is bad. You can go to um Sheol, which is, the hell, I guess the equivalent. There's
Mhm.
also the cathedral, which is more of like a heavenly place, and that place isn't perfect either, but like it shows different perspectives. And for example, like some religious items you can grab in the game and they'll harm you, other religious items you can grab in the game and they'll help you. And I know that there's a specific message, and like the creators have had their own kind of like perspective shared on this, but at least at the time, because I didn't see their perspectives when I played the game, I just played the game without seeing what the developers were saying about it necessarily. um, I just interpret it as, this is a game that's just talking about the different sides of religion. And I think it's interesting to see, especially coming from a country in Latin America where religion is so strong and so
Mhm.
prevalent. And in my community in particular, very Catholic, I have a Catholic family. Um, it was a safe and interesting environment to explore these topics in a game. And I guess that's why the story I felt was important.
Okay. No, no, no. That's actually something, and I don't want to mention like what's going on in the news today or during these days because maybe people watching this 5 years from now will have no idea what's going on. But yeah, recently with the Last of Us 2, which I haven't played it, and I don't want to talk about it because I
Yeah.
don't know what's going on around it. The only thing that I know is that some people complained about the content of the game or the story, or I honestly don't know. But the thing is, yeah, I believe that video games, as any type of expression, we can make them as just toys, like something that people can play and have fun. But in some cases, and I believe there are many games, they can be useful to deliver a message, right? Be useful to change the world. Be useful to normalize things that should be normalized, whatever that is, right? Like we don't want to get into any of these topics, but yeah, I think what the Binding of Isaac, and well, based on what you're telling me, it's great that that some game like this one is touching on those topics, and we're free to interpret this in any way that we want. But it's great to hear that there's a game talking about these topics, which I don't think there are many games talking about like religion or touching on those things.
I think there are, especially like since like kind of the big indie boom, there have been a bunch more. Um, I think that especially like, and again, like at the time, it wasn't a topic that was talked about as much. You mentioned something else interesting that I want to talk about before we stop talking about Binding of Isaac, and was that used to be a Flash game,
Mhm.
and that was a really huge deal for me. And I actually had seen bits of Binding of Isaac before because I grew up on Newgrounds, and I grew up in that kind of like Flash game developer community. When I first started game development, the first kind of engine that I used was Flash. And so I learned ActionScript and everything, and I made stupid little Flash games. But for me, Binding of Isaac, along with many other Flash games, part of the reason why they were so impactful for me were because they were some of the most accessible video games that I could find. Growing up in Puerto Rico, I even by the time I like got to high school and like graduated high school, I still didn't have Wi-Fi. I had dial-up internet. I would remember that there were so many games I couldn't play because they required internet connectivity, even just to download the game, let's say, and for like a big game, it was too much. So I played so many Flash games because it would take an hour to download, but that was better than not downloading at all, right? So I remember I would come home from school and I would run to the computer and I would just open up like a Flash game website, and usually that was Newgrounds or something. And
Yeah.
I think Edmund McMillan had another game at the time. I think it was Gish. I could be wrong. If I remember, it was a long time ago, but it was Gish like, or maybe Gish was inspired by this game. But anyway, I remember these types of games being on these portals. I remember Newgrounds, Albino Black Sheep, eZone, all these different like Flash game websites. I would just run home, boot one up, like go grab a snack or something in the time that it downloaded, and then come back and then like play one of these Flash games. And to me, that was a lot of how I kind of learned about a lot of different types of game styles and game mechanics without having to spend 40, 50, $60 every time I wanted to play a new game. So it was, I think also the fact that it was made in that kind of environment was a reason why it's on my list, and it's a big deal for me today.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And yeah, Flash was a huge thing for humanity in general, like for
Yeah.
web pages, for animations, for web comics, for games. Also, I think tools like Flash, tools like Unity, where anyone can make a game, anyone can make whatever they want. They they're great because they allow people to express in mediums that without this type of tools will be more difficult, right? Like in
Yep.
the era of Nintendo 64, or even I would say like before in the era of the Xbox, the original Xbox, it would be hard for someone to put a game out there because you needed to know certain things about programming, about art, about publishing. So things like Flash, things like Unity, or these open engines or free engines. I think it's super exciting. I also heard that Newsground is shutting
Newgrounds.
down. New
What? Was it?
Newgrounds. Yeah, I think I read that today. Yeah.
Okay, no. This is going to require a pause in the stream while I check this.
Yeah. Let's do some fact checking.
Fact, I think this is fake news. You moved to the United States and you're already embracing the whole like fake news thing.
That's what they told me. Once I moved here, they told me, okay, you have to just spread fake news. Yeah.
I don't see anything about. Wait,
Or maybe it was not Newgrounds. Yeah, probably no.
Newgrounds is still up. They're having an
Mhm.
Elon Musk jam. It looks like you're fake news, Arturo.
I'm fake news. Yeah.
Don't scare me like that.
No, there was another website. No, no, no. Okay, I'll put a note on the description just to make sure that I didn't shut Newgrounds down just because I said this.
Newgrounds is canceled. You heard it here first. I mean, it's like I don't know if you mean just like in general, Flash support is
no,
ending.
maybe it was Congregate. Okay, let's see. Maybe it was Congregate. Just
speed up this section in the stream.
No, okay. So here's the news from Polygon. Newgrounds is shifting away from Flash gaming. So I just said it was not Newgrounds, it's Congregate, and they are shifting away from Flash, which
okay.
I thought they already did. But yeah, well, it says.
I think that's the thing. It's like the kind of like all the big news that's happening with Flash games right now is because Flash is officially fully being deprecated this year. So any Flash games, any Flash websites, any Flash animations that you have on the web, you will not be able to look at them again. There's a bunch of different organizations working to preserve these games. Yes. But yes, a lot of sites are now having to look and find different options because if you want to use a modern browser, you just can't use the Flash game. So that's definitely going to have an impact on the experiences that have existed on sites like Congregate and Newgrounds. But don't scare me like that.
Yeah, and also for all the game developers out there, don't worry. Unity, our sponsor, no, they're not sponsoring this. No. No, but we're working on this thing called Project Tiny, which basically is it's a new technology that will allow people to run content, 3D content on web browsers without any plugin, which is great. Anyway.
But now we're geeking out about work again.
Yeah. Okay, so those were your 5 games. It was a wonderful conversation. Almost 2 hours. I thought we were going to run short on content because I've just played 1 game out of the 4 games that you listed. So I thought like, I'm not gonna have anything to say, but here we are, 1 hour and 45 minutes later. I really want to thank you for your time. It was great. It's Friday. I know you have a lot of stuff to do, a lot of places to go to.
In this quarantine, I just, it's you're lucky you got my time today. It's you got me in that like 1 hour and 45 minutes. I just happened to be in my apartment. So, you're welcome. It was fun. No, it was, thank you for having me here. I think this was a lot of fun. I think that even though we've worked together for so long, again, like we don't get to just talk and geek out about video games as much as I think we want to sometimes. And so this was super fun to do. And I warned you that I will talk about animal video games for as long as you let me. So
I know. That's what I'm stopping you because
I'm not flashy.
Yeah. No, but again, thank you very much. I also would like you to say something to, and probably this will be incorrect, but my intention is not to say something incorrect, but maybe you have a message for people, but in particular to young girls, in particular to young girls in Latin America, about jobs in the games industry or career in the games industry. What will be your advice for them?
I think it's so important to know that if you want to work in video games, even if you don't know what you want to do yet, there's so many ways that you can apply different talents and skills that you already have into the industry. Whether you want to make art for games, you can be an artist. If you want to be a programmer, write code, you can become a programmer. If you want to be an actress, you could be an actress and act and have your face captured for a video game character performance. The way that game technology has been expanding and evolving means that not only that so many more people can participate in the process of making games, but that more people can make games, and that includes you, and you could start now. The one thing I wish I did and what I wish I knew how to do was how to make games when I was younger. And now it's easier than ever. There's tools like visual scripting tools, things like Bolt and Unity that you can use to create games without having to learn how to code. And I'm already evangelizing again, but my point being is that there are free resources available to you. And if you want to get into it, try it. Like see what you like, see what you want to do. If you want a career in this industry, it's totally possible. You can do it. I believe in you. I did it, so that means you can do it too. No, it's I think we need more. We need more Latinas in this industry for sure. So I encourage you to join.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ashley. So one last thing, where can people reach out to you if they want to see what you're working on, the events that you'll be participating? What's the best way to keep in touch with you?
If you want to see the talks that I give or the silly demos that I make with Unity or just countless photos of my dogs, I'm not sorry. You can find me on Twitter at Avashly, Avashly. I live there, so it's the quickest way to find me for sure. And then, and if you're working on Unity games or just games in general, and you have a question or you want to argue about why Zoo Tycoon for DS was actually a good game and I shouldn't have returned it, then my DMs are open. So see you there.
That's right. That's right. Again, thank you very much for your time. It was a great conversation, and yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I think you hired someone to laugh at your jokes because I kept hearing someone laughing.
My apartment has no walls, so Jeb has been hearing a bunch of this and he's like laughing in the background. So he's my on cue laugh track. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day and enjoy your 4th of July.
Thank you. You enjoy your 4th of July as well. This is your first 4th of July since you moved to the US, right?
Yeah. I don't know what I have to do. How should I?
Got to get you some American flags, a barbecue grill. You're in Texas, some guns, just like the fireworks, whole shebang. Happy first America Day in America, or United States Day in United States Day.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Talk to you on Monday, I guess, or Tuesday.
Or Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Ashley.
Bye.
Bye-bye.